Sounds good.
All right, hello and welcome everyone. How are you guys doing tonight? And yep, I can hear me, and everyone else can probably hear me too. We'll get a second of echo there. Sorry about that. I was trying to figure out. Someone was saying that the audio cut out over in YouTube, and I was trying to hear it, and I forgot to mute it back. So whoops. Get this all ready. All right, so yeah, apparently I've been hearing that I got some explaining to do. I won't.
That's for sure.
At least I won't do it coherently. I never do it coherently. But I hope you guys are doing well. John, how you doing this evening?
Not bad. Although I am curious about some of these accusations. What your response will be.
Let's see what these accusations are. Now, I did see you put out a bit of a spoiler for tonight's episode.
Did I?
This afternoon, but if you weren't here at the time, that the chat, I think it only goes back like 2 hours. So anyone who didn't have the chat loaded up, you can't see it now. But John did put a spoiler emoji in at like 5 or something. So let's see. John DiMarco is here first. Thank you, John. Saying guaranteed to have less yelling than anti-trucker open panel. Ooh, I didn't get to catch that yet. But I did see that he did an open panel, and the people up there, they're dynamic people, wonderful people, very dynamic individuals. So I bet there was some yelling.
They believe their opinions very strongly.
That's right. I don't know if I have any opinions that strongly, but well, I think I might have one, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, there's at least one that we know about from last night.
Oh gosh. Thomas is saying you better yell at me, so keep that in mind. 47 Yorktown's here saying DeMarco/Darwin/Jarwin 2024. Or no, I see. DeMarco Darwin 2024 saying you and the Dolphin for running mate, which we've had worse presidents. Like, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, I think you can say in the past 8 years we have had worse presidents than John DiMarco and an animatronic dolphin Darwin would be.
In fact, my vote's for the dolphin himself.
I mean, Darwin would fix everything.
Dude.
He loves people almost unconditionally. No, I'm going to say unconditionally. He helped one of the greatest mass murderers in all of history reconcile with his son, because Darwin just loves people unconditionally.
Yes, even William Shatner.
Even William Shatner.
And that's a nice segue into one of our next accusations. But,
it is.
William Shatner is a little co-star.
What's that? The attractiveness of a co-star?
I mean, segue into William Shatner's co-star that we know that you have a certain degree of affection for.
Yeah. Thomas wants to know, why do I lust for Spock? Anti-Trucker wants to know, what is the deal with Spock love? We must know. And John is saying Matthew and Leonard sitting in a tree.
It's not just any Spock. There's a certain Spock.
That's right. I was talking TOS Spock. That I'd rather, if I had to kiss someone between Michael Burnham and Leonard Nimoy Spock, I would pick Leonard Nimoy Spock. And I stand by that decision. I think season 1 Michael Burnham was a very manly looking individual. They let her look feminine in season 3, but man, they were really trying to push this whole Burnham is butch idea for some reason in the first season, and I would much sooner kiss Spock than I would kiss season 1 Michael Burnham. There you go.
Does your wife know about this?
She might now. She was probably asleep for the pub during that part, but she knows now.
And not only that, when we were talking about it on the stream earlier, you sent a derogatory donation threatening anti-trucker for sharing it.
Did I?
That?
Which one was this? Because I may have made many derogatory donations. You never can tell with me.
Well, I guess you have to ask anti-trucker for the details, but I know it was filled with profanity.
Filled with profanity. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I'm getting a message maybe a little bit ago about perhaps Ooh. Well, I can't see all of it, but I do see me calling him a ghoul, or no, I am accusing him of having gall. What gall? For making fun of me and Spock, and now he stole you. He stole you. I get you were on his panel. Wow.
Yes.
I guess that anti-Trekker's the language he received was well deserved, or at least mildly deserved, tangentially deserved.
I already put the your comments in the chat too, in case anybody wanted to read it in full.
Oh wow, yeah, I really laid into him there. I'm so flabbergasted with you as the rest of it. You and that old lady can go to, and then apparently it has to be censored. It was so bad. Wow.
I mean, yeah, he's a real potty mouth when he gets angry.
It's true. I can swear like a Puritan sailor. I mean, it comes out. Well, let's see what else is. Oh gosh, what else is going on? I'm sure that's not going to be the end of that. And Anti-Trekker is saying that the audio cut out. No idea what that's about, but hopefully / surely it is back by now. It may have been. I don't know. Who knows with my setup? I do weird things with my setup.
Sure.
And yep, there's the echo. Sorry about that. And Jim Henry, how you doing tonight? I don't think I've seen you around before, Jim Henry. I hope you're well. Saying it was a passionate, spirited discussion. That's the way we enjoyed them. And speaking of those, I haven't seen LDG for a while. I had hoped that he'd come talk some Marvel stuff with us, but unfortunately he hasn't been around when I've been streaming. So hopefully you're doing well, LDG, if you see this, of Geeks Enjoy, all kinds of things. And Averick Sonder was saying, ew, Quentin Spock was way hotter. Well, I won't debate that. It's just that the way it was presented last night, I happened to be talking about TOS Spock, and I would say that even of that, like, I'd sooner pick TOS Spock over Season 1, Burnham. Now, if we want to talk, like, if you had to kiss a Spock, any Spock, ooh, which one would it be? Would it be Leonard Nimoy? Would it be Zachary Tarantino? Quintino? Tarantino, yeah. Would it be JJ Spock, or would it be Discovery Spock? I think Discovery Spock made a mistake when he shaved the beard, even though he needed to match up with what we know of actual timeline. I think he definitely looked more rugged and handsome with a beard. And when you stroke the beard thusly, do you not look contemplative? How does that line to go with Data when I stroke the beard thusly? I forget. Data grew a beard briefly, and he had a good line about it. And yeah, he did look silly without the beard. He did. So, of any of the three Spocks, if you had to kiss one of them, I'd probably go with JJ Spock. I think he was the most handsome of the three. Thanks for the question. And see, I'm secure enough in my masculinity to be okay talking about this. I am not a bi man. I am straight, but I have no problem talking this stuff. I have no qualms about it. And hey, Trek reviewer, saying Data graduated from Starfleet Academy with honors in exobiology and probability mechanics, and according to Memory Beta, Data served as a science officer before his assignment to the Enterprise D. I think we heard about that even like on one of the TNG episodes. I want to say, yeah, he definitely mentioned serving somewhere before the Enterprise. I'm not sure if we got anything specific, but we definitely got it. We definitely got mention of it somewhere. So I believe I've stalled long enough. Let me go ahead and drop into the chat the StreamYard link, or not StreamYard, excuse me, the cytu.be link. So the way this works is during the stream right now, if you're watching live, the link that I just dropped into the chat and I will be pinning in just a moment, that's the link you can go to and watch SeaQuest live with us right now. If you're in the future and you want to watch the whole episode with us, you're going to need to have your own source. And the number one best way of doing this is to sign up for a 100% free account over on Peacock TV. Hashtag not sponsored, but willing to shill anyway. All you have to do is provide them with a legitimate email address to create an account, and you will be able to log in and watch all 3 seasons of SeaQuest 2032/DSV, however that technically works out. I know it's 2 seasons of SeaQuest DSV, 1 season of SeaQuest DSV 2032, something like that. When we do a time jump and a cast change, a second cast change, which that's rough. I mean, we already had the first cast change between season 1 and 2 because they went from the West Coast to East Coast. Was it Jarwin?
Yes, the second season was produced in Florida.
Yeah, so a lot of them didn't make the transition. You know, the core people did. You still had Bridger, you still had Lewis, you still had Ford, you still had Ortiz and Darwin. Can't forget Darwin. You still had O'Neill. So I mean that's a lot of people right there. But then you also lost the original Doctor, which I think was just much better chemistry with Bridger. You lost Krieg, who was just a treasure through and through. And I would have loved to have some Krieg and Piccolo episodes. I think that would have been fantastic. But then you go from that and transition into changing it a third time. So not only do you have a time skip, you also have another decent cast change, from what I understand, or at least you have the lead changing, and that is always a hard thing to survive. And unfortunately, it didn't. Season 3 is going to be the last season of SeaQuest that we get or ever got up till now, and it's also the shortest. So we'll see it when we get to it, everyone. But that's the thing. You have to go to Peacock TV if you want to watch this, or obviously you can buy physical copies of this off of Amazon or off of eBay. If, however, you're watching this and you can't watch it, or you're watching this in the future and you don't want to sign up for another streaming service, even though it is free, we got you covered. I am providing clips for the episode right below us, right here. Excuse me. And that way, as John and I talk about it, hopefully with some relevant information, whatever pops into my rambling mind and whatever quips John feels like adding to it, it's a fun time for us all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this started. So I'm going to give us a 5 count, and I'm going to hit play over in the screening room. Hopefully you're there ready to watch this with us. So everyone, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm hitting the play button over there and the play button over here. So the clips and the show should be a going. Mercer Gray saying, I have not been and never will be your friend.
So we're in the South Atlantic.
And honestly, they're doing some sort of core samples or some sort of looking for something from the bottom of the seabed board. Wow. I can talk some days, but not often. The seabed here. And I never quite get a definitive answer on why this is important throughout the episode. Like they set up this thing that's going on, and then it's never really addressed. But it's important.
We'll see.
Somehow. And I often wonder where they're doing these shots, because this is a beautiful, clear water that they're dealing with. And then you get out and you're like, that's not where you just were. Like, that is not beautiful, clear water. So there's this sea mine company that's dumping their product and it's somehow messing up the product that these guys are getting from the ocean floor. And sure enough, they look at the spectral analysis of this sample they took, and it is just, it's the worst. And speaking of the worst, their boat just takes off on them. It gets totally spun around. And they're thinking maybe it's one of the sea mine's vessels, their submersibles, and they're actually dumping on the seafloor right now in their territory. Because if they can catch them in the act, they can get the UEO to intervene and hopefully shut these people down. And hey, Truth Apocalypse, how you doing tonight? Multi-Gunman, it is going well. I hope that you are doing well also. Yes, Thomas. The days where I can talk are the days where I am missing in action.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I have no proof of it, but you'll just have to take my word for it. So down she again goes into this beautiful water right here. And, you know, like this is clearly, like, this has got to be an artificial tank somewhere. Like, maybe they're at a Sea World or a Sea Life or something, and they must have some sort of arrangement, because, you know, they're always doing the end summary of like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and did you know the difference between a dolphin and a porpoise? So, I mean, that must be where they're doing it.
We got a crazy red vision. It's always an ominous sign.
And she's gone. A flash of teeth, and that's it. She's out of here. Hey, Trek Yards, how you doing? The other guy is John DiMarco, a.k.a. Darwin, a.k.a. Jarwin, as I get his name wrong continually.
I think I just sit really still unless I'm having technical issues.
No, you're not having technical issues. He's giving us a hard time. But Jenna is all the dead, unfortunately. But the good news is she's not going to be alone for long. Whatever it was comes rushing up to the top. Screen goes red again, and that's it. Jenna's friend is also dead.
Cue the theme song.
Cue the theme song. Multi-gunman.
Yes, while Turkestan does have crappy internet, fortunately I do not live in Turkestan.
No, that'd be me. I'm the Turkestani.
What? You were announcing your Krogan citizenship?
Huh. No, but I am quite dyslexic. No, I am Kurokin. I'm also an idiot. That one's gonna come back to Bird, and that one's gonna haunt me.
We got to inform Bird his citizens are abandoning him.
Now, and impressively here, SeaQuest so accurately predicts the future. Not only are they showing a VR headset, they're also showing a exercising with a VR headset, which is very popular. Like, maybe not with the VR headset, but it's really popular for at least biking to have a screen in your bike so you can be doing these virtual bike rides on a trainer bike instead of out in, you know, actual nature.
Yeah, they're good about that.
But Ford, he's unwilling to stop his exercise. Someone's trying to get a hold of him. This guy's been on hold for a long time, and it turns out it's his father, and he doesn't really want to talk to him. But for some reason, O'Neill is not getting the hint. And he's like, well, come on, sir, surely you want to talk to your dad, right? And Ortiz is like, well, I guess they have a special relationship. And so they're ready to put Ford through, but it's a blank screen, just a beautiful beach, but nothing to see. And there's Piccolo, takes a look at the no food in the fitness center and continues to eat his corn dog. which is just so great. I mean, Piccolo, it seems like so many of the first times we see him in the episodes, he is eating some sort of hot dog confection and giving it to someone else by the end of the scene. he's so impressed with this beautiful sandy beach that that's being shown, because Ortiz screwed up. Instead of sending it off to Ford's quarters, he put it right on the rec center wall. And, you know, Piccolo's like, who are you? And, you know, they're doing the back and forth. And you know, finally Ford shows up in his room and gets it transferred correctly. Just in time for, you know, that would have been a perfect opportunity for Crocker had he come over from season 1 to 2.
Yeah.
But he tries to pawn it off. And Jim's saying when he throws up, then it's an accurate prediction.
And it turns out those two people who got eaten earlier actually worked for his dad.
Apparently it's like a startup company still. Which is interesting because we find out it's been going on for a while, but it's still in the startup phase. Multi-Gunman is saying that I was recently exiled to Turkestan. That's why he said he was in Turkestan. That must be it, Multi-Gunman. But Ford is saying, you know, I'm not allowed to interfere. I know you got some beef going on with this ocean mine people or sea mine, whatever their name is. But the UEO is neutral. We can't take sides in your business wars. And the dad's saying, I'm not asking you to come down here in your professional capacity. I just want you to come down as a son. And Ford is reluctant. He says, well, what is that going to say? Like, how is Ben going to feel about that? My brother.
The answer is he's not going to like it.
Yeah. And here he is not liking it. And Ben, the brother, is saying, just give me 24 hours and I'll have Sea Mine on their knees. And I don't know if it's just me, but I don't feel like they really did a good job of hiring actors that really looked like Ford in this episode for his family.
Yeah.
Like, I could believe that Piccolo's mom was Piccolo's mom. And I could believe that, what's his name? Lieutenant Jim's mom was his mom.
No, Brody, yeah.
Brody, yes, there we go. But I don't know. I'm not seeing the familiar resemblance here.
They're talking about how this mining under the water is causing, you know, rising temperatures to like melt ice in Antarctica.
And Ford jumps in saying, well, look, you need to keep in mind that, yes, we are losing some mass from the ice caps, but we're feeding millions. So where do you draw the lines? Which, I don't know if you remember this, John, but around this time, Bill Gates was getting a lot of flack for his GMOs. Maybe it was a couple years after this, but I want to say it was in the mid-90s. GMOs were kind of a hot topic. And that was the exact thing. There's like, well, maybe in 50 years, GMOs could cause cancer. And Bill Gates was like, there's no proof for that. But also, it's keeping people from dying right now by allowing wheat and corn to be grown in arid environments where they couldn't be grown naturally, like normally.
Yeah, they've already made an issue before in the show about it. They have a hard time raising enough resources for everyone.
Hey, Daniel's Hot Topic, how are you doing? You want to know if I knew that girls make videos of them shaving off their sideburns? I did not know that. I'm not surprised that it exists. I mean, everything's
trying to
out there
wrap-
on the internet.
I was trying to wrap my mind around a girl with sideburns.
I mean, I guess everyone has a tiny bit of sideburns.
Yeah.
I'd never really thought about it, nor had I thought about why you might want to shave them off. Like, I could understand if a girl had like mutton chops, but just like a little, like right there level of hair. Hey, Vile Mike, how you doing? And Dagwood is trying to understand why Ford is so nervous or apprehensive, unwilling to go see his family. And he makes an analogy to how it's kind of like going to a restaurant. It's easier to be around people who kind of have to be nice to you, regardless of even if you're showing off their bad side. And Dagwood's trying to put it together like, I get it. We have family so that we can drive them to distractions at a restaurant where there are people who don't have to love us. Which, I mean, and he's still carrying around the corn dog. Like, he hasn't eaten it. He hasn't thrown away. He's just holding on to it, I guess, for Piccolo later on. And exactly, Vile. Or go on, John.
Gesturing with the corn dog gives emphasis to all the points that he's making. It's very effective.
Yes, and Vile, that is exactly right. The GMOs, life-saving creations that literally save millions, if not billions, of lives every year. I'm not sure I'd say billions. I think we'd run out of billions, but definitely, I mean, it saves millions of lives, definitely. But yeah, I don't know if you remember it, but there was so much drama about it. Maybe it was later than the 90s. I thought it was the 90s.
I don't remember exactly when it was.
But, you know, it also things like that reminds me of the proverb that talks about how the kindness of the wicked is cruel. That even when they try to be kind, a wicked person is just cruel. And that's what it's like. I mean, when people start getting huffy about a GMO because they don't want people to be exposed to something modified and would rather let them starve, it's like, how privileged can you get where you want to deny other people food? It blows my mind. But Ford shows up and meets up with his brother Ben, and his brother Ben was trying to convince this other guy to do something, and it seemed it was something nefarious and something something the other guy really wasn't interested in doing, but Ben kind of pushed his hand.
Have a good night, Multigun Man. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, later, Multigun Man. And, you know, I do believe they're doing a good job selling the whole we're brothers who are kind of at odds with each other. I'll give them that. And it's not even their fault. I mean, the other brother is like, look, we never see each other. What does it matter if we're not the closest? What does it matter if we're not the best of friends? And I can get that mentality. But at the same time, I do kind of agree with Ford, who hasn't made this statement, but clearly is of the mindset with, it doesn't matter if we don't see each other that much. You're my brother, and I want to have a good relationship with you. Daniel, how old was I when this show came out? I was, let's see, it started in, 93, I want to say? So I would have been 9. I would have been 9 when this show came out.
It's about the same for me.
Which is weird because I feel like I was older when it came out, but when I do the math, I wasn't. Same with Voyager. Like, I feel like that hit me when I was 13, 14, 15. But Voyager came out in... No, wait, DS9 came out in 93. Voyager came out more like 95.
Yeah.
So I would have been closer to 12, 13, 14, 95. And Vile Mike is saying that SeaQuest Season 1, mostly exploring and science underwater. Season 2, political things underwater. Season 3, action underwater.
Pretty good summary, although Season 2 has some kind of crazy shenanigans going on under the water as well, as we'll see in this episode, for example. We got the red vision back.
We do, and we see that this guy has gone over to Sea Mine and is setting up an explosive on one of Sea Mine's support struts. Like, this is Ben's big plan. Corporate sabotage. And the guy turns around, he sees the red vision and tries to get out of the water, but it's too late. He's gone. He's dead for. So congratulations, Ben. You killed a man. And Darwin letting us know the details we need to know for the episode.
And has SeaQuest been underwater yet this season? Yes, but a lot less than it was in the first season.
Darwin is explaining how sea lions are disappearing, dolphins are disappearing, everyone's afraid. And how there's this creature that's eating everything, and it came from cold water, and now it's in warm water. But they don't know what it is. And the dad is mad that this guy, Paulie, is missing. That he was out in the middle of the night, or Ben claims he was out in the middle of the night doing something, you know, legal. But we all know that, no, he was out in the middle of the night planting explosives. And Vile Mike is saying that 90 to 95% of human insulin is made by GMOs. That alone saves millions of lives just in the US every day, not to mention the millions that are fed by GMO crops. I would say billions is a safe bet. Interesting, Vile. I didn't know that about the insulin. It's just... That'd be like losing... what would that math come out to? Are we at 9 billion people in the world yet, or are we at 8?
I don't know.
Let's say 9, just to... No, let's say 8 to make that a bigger percentage. That would be... 1 divided by 8 goes in once. What, 13.5%? Something like that? 13.5% of the population gone in a year? That'd be... I mean, I think it'd be a high number, but losing 13% of the world's population a year, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm really underestimating how many people benefit from GMOs.
Jim's asking about Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I've never seen it myself, but I have heard it is very similar to this show.
I have not seen it either, Jim. You know, I don't know why Twitch doesn't block comments like that. Like, I set up some filtering, but it still gets through.
You don't know if part of your real plan to buy subscribers.
Putting in that subliminal messaging. Hey guys, wouldn't you like to buy some subs for me? Huh?
Uh-huh.
Well, the jig is up. The Sea Mine people found the explosives on the bottom of the rig. And the guy, you know, they're bickering back and forth, and he pulls this out, and he's like, look, I'm willing to let this go. I'm willing to not report this to the UEO. But you guys got to take care of this right now, which, you know, that's actually impressive on his part. And, you know, Ben is like, please don't tell Daddy. Don't tattle, please. But Ford calls him out. He said, no, you're going to do it. You're going to tell not only Dad, but you're going to tell Polly's wife that her husband is dead because you sent him to go blow up Sea Mine. Vile saying that he was a subscriber that was purchased by Live with Matthew. Shh. Don't let people know, man. Thomas is saying 500 million Americans died last year, according to Nancy Pelosi. Did she really make that comment? I did not hear that. The CDC would disagree. But okay. But unfortunately...
Well, Ford...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Say Ford's out in the Stinger right now, and his father is looking at the footage they found from the camera. And he's telling Ford to get out of the water as quickly as possible because there's something out there.
We see just this giant tail come, jutting out of the water, swinging around. And the dad is yelling, get down into the kelp, hide in the kelp forest now. And we finally see what it is. And it is a giant crocodile. So Ford dives to the seabed and hides in the kelp forest to hopefully get away from that. And Trek Reviewer is saying that Ben looks like he could double for Ben Sisko. I don't quite see that.
I mean, they have some similarities, but I don't think I would mistake them for each other.
So the dad wants Ford to just... the dad is Ford, excuse me.
Well, yeah.
The dad wants Jonathan Ford to floor it for the beach in just a few seconds. He says, when I give you the heads up, you just floor it for the beach. And he's like, there's no way I can get there. The crocodile is going to get me. And he goes, no, I'm going to have the crocodile distracted because I'm going to dump this krill into the water. Because so apparently that's what they're mining. They are mining biological life, and then they use the krill, I guess, for synthesizing food. Like oranges, according to Krieg from the last season. But it works. The crocodile goes off for the food, and Ford is able to drive up onto the beach here, which they are incredibly blasé at this point. Like, okay, emergency over, everything's fine, and I'm over here like, it's a crocodile, man. They come up on shore. like go. But Jonathan he's calling up. He's calling up Captain Pritchard now. He's like, okay, now this falls on the auspices of the UEO.
Yeah, we're at giant crocodile level.
Jim is saying that plot-wise, I'm assuming you're talking about Journey to the Bottom of the Sea and SeaQuest. They seem very similar. I'll have to check it out. And thankfully, because Lewis insisted on titanium siding for the Stinger, that is what saved Ford right there. That's what saved Jonathan. And for some reason, B'Elanna Troy over there is doubting him. Like, hey, I can see something took a bite out of the Stinger. Maybe it was just a regular crocodile. They can grow big sometimes. And it's like, excuse me, its head was 40 feet long. What are you trying to pull with this? Maybe it was just a bigger than usual crocodile.
And I was like, hey, nobody believed me when I saw a mermaid, and that turned out to be true.
Exactly. But thankfully, Lewis believes him. Dagwood is still in the background holding on to that corn dog.
But I think it's a giant prehistoric crocodile.
Which, I mean, I had to laugh a little bit at this line because old Earth, young Earth, either way, everyone pretty well universally recognizes that crocodiles and alligators are quote-unquote prehistoric. So, I mean, of course, like, and they're like, oh wow, how could something from prehistoric age be here? And it's like, well, it's a crocodile. They literally are prehistoric. But they're trying to say that no, what really happened is that we have a blast from the past situation where this creature was frozen suddenly in an iceberg, managed to survive for millions of years, and now that the ice caps are melting, it's been released from the glacier and it's come back into the world.
Robert asks, is SeaQuest bigger than a blue whale? Well, that's a good question.
I think so. The SeaQuest is so big. How big is it? It's so big that you need a maglift to go from the back end of it up to the front end. I was saying there are no crocodiles that got that big in the fossil record. SeaQuest isn't 100% accurate?
So apparently blue whales are about 80 foot long. I looked that up. I know sure SeaQuest is longer than that.
And Violet's saying, Hail Avis, they try harder. Oh, I miss the Orville. I'm ready for it to be back. And they are saying it is time to evacuate everyone. Like, this single creature is devastating the ecosystem, and it's to the point that even the people need to evacuate. And the father, Mr. Ford, says, don't you mean the villagers? Like, obviously I can stay, the corporations. And Bridger's like, no, you can't stay. This is a massive emergency. This thing is eating up people left and right. It's time to get out of the area. And the dad's like, well, I guess you can call my bank and explain to them I'm going to default on my loans now. Josh wants to know, wasn't this made before they found out what happens to flesh when it becomes frozen for years? Probably. But I mean, even once we found out, people still like to go with the frozen equals able to dethaw and come back to life. Truck Reviewer is saying SeaQuest is like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Voyage came out first. The ships on both shows are subs that have their designers on board and are commanded by a military individual. I'm assuming it's the rest of that sentence. It got cut off. Or military officer. Yeah. So Ortiz has a great question here. He's like, well, wait a minute. Or it turns out you're rich. Like, you're crazy rich. Why are you still working? And Ford's like, because I'd like to boss people like you around. Oh, come on. Let's get people evacuated.
Yes, and Thomas has a question for you, Matthew.
Okay.
He wants you to answer, what is the back and front of ships called?
Let's see. You got the port and the bow. And you got the stern and starboard. Why? Did I say something?
I don't know, but he asked.
Did I mispronounce something again? I probably did.
Probably, although I didn't notice. I mean, it happens so often. It's hard to take note of it sometimes.
I may have said something like from stem to stern. But Ford and Ford are having a nice father-son moment. He's basically telling him he needs to lighten up. He needs to relax. He needs to stop kind of being a jerk to his two sons and be more of a father, be more of a dad. Although
I have a feeling that since they're doing this kind conversation on the beach when there's a giant crocodile out there, their conversation might be interrupted at some point.
Like I just can't get past that point. Like, you have 170 foot long crocodile, and everyone just stands on the seashore. Like, this is a great spot for a conversation. Like, no, this is a horrible spot for a conversation.
It's like the worst spot.
Josh Street wants to know, what is the toilet called on a submarine? It's called the head. There's some random aquatic questions for me. Robert wants to know, what side did the Titanic strike the iceberg on then? Was it the port?
I don't know that one.
Now these boxes, they made me laugh because if you look at them, they have the hazardous material symbol on them. That's the red, blue, and yellow diamond. But they actually don't have anything on the blue, red, and yellow diamonds. They're just the stickers by themselves. Whereas actual hazardous material would have a further identification, like a number or something, to let you know exactly what was in these containers, such that if something went wrong, you could know how to clean it. Like, if there was a spill, it lets you know how you need to isolate it, how you need to treat it, how you need to clean up, and if you need to issue any like environmental warnings.
And speaking of environmental warnings, a giant tail just slithered up the beach.
As the dad walked into the forest. Trek Fury saying Star Trek has often wrong song. Well, we have often wrong Matthew. Thank you. Yes. Daniel's Hot Topic saying, Matthew, did I know that the Titanic was about time travel? I know there's a Doctor Who episode about the Titanic in space with David Tennant. Had some great lines in it. Jim is saying that the stern of the ship is aft.
Yes.
Okay.
And speaking of often wrong, Matthew, Val Mike says, sometimes they do just have the diamond if the packaging of shipped products or manifests lists single chemical items.
Really? I've never seen it that way. I've always seen the further information. So
yes, I agree with Thomas. These are cutting edge graphics.
Oh yeah. So Ben heroically sacrifices himself to distract the crocodile from the dad, and he goes up this sand dune, and you see the crocodile apparently eat him, but the crocodile runs off, and Ben's alive. He had fallen into the crocodile's nest. Little known fact, if you're being chased by a crocodile, you can lie down in its nest of eggs, and it 100% just leaves you alone, apparently. Who knew?
Well, I'm sure she doesn't want to hurt her eggs.
Maybe that only works for prehistoric crocodiles.
Yes, this would be a perfect setup for Crocnado.
I kind of was waiting for it, to be honest. Daniel's Hot Topic saying that there are several time travelers on the Titanic. I have heard that... what would I call it? I have heard that bunk. There's been no credible evidence, Daniel. I'm sorry. I know you guys were talking about time travel last night. I am unfortunately on the side of things that says time travel is impossible. It's a fun sci-fi plot point, but real life time travel, I don't buy it. But Viola is saying that Clorox is one of the companies my job deals with, and we deal with shipping of large quantities of bleach. Oh, and that's why you know that sometimes they just have the diamond if the packing of just shipped product or manifest lists single chemical items. Okay, well, I sit corrected.
Good old Dagwood.
Yeah, wonderful Dagwood. Ben and his dad have a touching moment and hug and laugh. So Dagwood, not to be left out of the family moment, goes to give Ford a big hug. But hey, they had lost a crocodile, but at last they found her. She's sunning herself on the beach, quasi-protecting her nest. And Vile's saying that this episode gave birth to the Super Mega Dino Croc series of sci-fi movies. One does wonder. So good and bad news time from Balana Troy. The crocodile was and is a healthy 3-year-old. 3.5-year-old, excuse me. And this is bad news because they live for 120 years and they lay eggs several times a year. So that is a single entity that can just devastate the world ecology. But the good news is she's sterile, 100% unable to have babies, and has been her whole life. So now they have a question. What happens to the mom? Do they kill her? Do they let her be and continue to live in the area? And Ford says, no, we got to kill her.
But Dagwood comes in with his corn dog and says you can't kill her. We know that since he has the corn dog, he obviously has the correct argument.
It's kind of like the speaking stick. Once you have it, you got the right to speak and be right. So Dagwood, he comes up with the right idea. He says, we just need to put her back. Put her back on ice. And the Ford brother, father are like, well, how do we get her back? How do we get her back 100 million years? He goes, no, that's not it. That's not where she's from anymore. She's from the ice. All we have to do is freeze her again. Which, again, I don't think that's how this works.
And Thomas says we should nuke her.
I think you've been listening to our president too much.
Now we're sending out Darwin to lure her out.
Vile's saying that not really. I'm saying it wouldn't really be devastating to the ecology. There's just not enough life to sustain a population. Plus, the genetic bottleneck of such a small breeding population would have a deleterious effect, nice word, in just a few generations. That's actually a great point, and it's really a fascinating study that there have been a species that we've observed where through circumstance, they were isolated from the rest of the breeding pool, and they became a new subspecies very quickly, in which, because of the limited breeding populace, a lot of stuff went wrong for them, and they became extremely specialized because of just the few amount of genes they had in the breeding pool. But you have to wonder, Vile, even in that short time, if that crocodile took out one of the keystone species, it could have an extreme effect. Like, for instance, sea otters, keystone species. Without them, the sea urchins take over an entire bay area very quickly. Without the sea urchins being eaten, then the sea urchins eat all the seaweed in the area, which impacts the oxygen levels of the bay, which causes life to very quickly dissipate. So a single species being removed by a creature like this could actually have huge, far-reaching impacts. But Darwin is here to save the day as usual.
Darwin's the key to everything.
So they rigged a photon torpedo to be a tranquilizing photon torpedo, or concussion torpedo maybe. But she's out. So now they can capture her and put her back on ice. Daniel's Hot Topic saying, what on earth? This is so not fair. Crocodiles live 150 years, turtle live 200 years, some live 400 years, and humans live 75 to 80 years. And my Kiko only lived 15 years and 11 months. Not fair. You know, I get what you're saying, but a lot of it is that, you know, God has put a certain amount of naturally balancing in terms of ecology, and on species that have long life cycles, they also have low breeding rates. And if they didn't live those extremely long lifespans, they would be completely gone very quickly. Whereas a creature like a dog that has very fast breeding rate, if they lived a long time, they would quickly overwhelm a population. So it is sad. I do get what you're saying, but there is a logic to it. Thomas Potts, what was the third word Daniel typed? It was FU at pound dollar percent carrot. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, but I did my best to translate. So they released the crocodile back onto an ice shelf. So far, so good. And they had talked previously about liquid nitrogen to freeze the crocodile. Apparently, they decided that plan was not good, and they would rather just shoot a torpedo at a wall of ice and bury the crocodile in ice. Now, I'm not a scientist. I admit this. But I'm pretty sure rather than freezing the crocodile, this would just crush the crocodile and kill it.
Now the key is they hit the ice in just the right spot so that the ice falls all around the crocodile without killing it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Josh, the Bible does say that humans lived hundreds of years, but that was well, there's many theories about that, such as the flood changing the nature of the environment. But you'll see those lifespans drastically decreasing after the flood.
So Ford's ready to go, or Jonathan Ford is ready to go. And the dad's saying, well, you know, I guess I need to say goodbye first. And it's like, well, why? Why do you need to say goodbye? He goes, well, I'm going to go to Nepal. And we find out that the dad is finally listening. After this encounter, he's ready to take a year off and just go retire for a little bit. Let Ben see the world at large. Well, Viola, I know that you have that stance, but I respectfully disagree. So Ben's going to do great. He's going to take over the business, see how he can run it. And the dad, who, remember, is filthy rich, is going to enjoy a well-deserved vacation, kind of like Jeff Bezos. And I guess Jonathan doesn't know how to play soccer. Because he treats it like a volleyball instead of a soccer ball. And of course it goes way too far. Some poor kid has to run and catch it. But it's important that he does so, because it turns out, what do we have in the corner but more crocodile eggs? And one of them is shaking. Because clearly someone watched Godzilla from the 1999 Godzilla, traveled back in time, and set up this episode.
Remember, life finds a way.
So Balana Troy is explaining the differences between dolphins and porpoises. With dolphins having a longer nose, whereas porpoises have stubbier noses. And some teeth differences. So hey, how did you enjoy this episode of SeaQuest, John?
Well, even though the giant crocodile is obviously silly, I thought it was fun in a campy kind of way.
It was
like
interesting.
The interaction.
Go on.
Yeah, I like the interaction between Ford and his family. I like the character development there.
Yeah, Thomas, I butchered the word porpoises. I heard it too. I 100% butchered that word. But would we expect anything less than me at this point?
Nope.
And sorry, Vile, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. They have teeth differences too. Something about dolphins have more cone-shaped teeth and porpoises have more spade-shaped teeth. So yeah, I thought it was interesting to see them flexing their 1994 muscles on CGI graphics. Because I don't know, I'd say that was probably on par with what I've seen from Babylon 5, just a few of the tracking shots. It was close on par with the very beginning episodes of Farscape, which came out in like 99, 98. So I mean, it was decent enough for the time. Laughable now, but it was good at the time. I mean, it definitely was no Jurassic Park using actual animatronics to create your creatures, but it worked.
And it's pretty good for a TV show, I think. I also like that they, despite the my doubts about what that ice did to the crocodile, I appreciate that they're at least trying to solve the problem without killing it.
Yeah, Vile. That's such a bad dad joke. He butchered the word on porpoise. Thank you, Vile. Ladies and gentlemen, Vile Mike. He'll be here all week. Hey, Vile, when's the next time you're going to release one of your Voltron or TOS reviews with the Vile Child? It's been so long. We all love your dad puns, Vile. Anyone who claims they don't love a good dad pun, I think, is fibbing. They're being less than honest. Everyone enjoys a good roll your eye dad pun. Now, Thomas thinks they should have killed it because it will wake up eventually. I do agree, John. I like the fact that the SeaQuest people tried to find a way to preserve its life. I think launching a torpedo at it and crushing it with ice wasn't the best way of doing it. Like, it would have made a lot more sense to... It was going to be CGI no matter what. So they could have just done a CGI where, like, they launch a torpedo, it blows up, and it's full of liquid nitrogen. And so now you got, like, this ice surrounding it. Okay, that's good. But it did seem weird that their solution to get it back in the ice was to blow it up. But I would have even more enjoyed see them at least try and think of a way to basically do the sea life idea, where what if we made a giant area where it could be contained? You know, what if we put it in a lake in the middle of nowhere and built this giant wall such that it would have, 100 acres or something to roam about in the middle of, like, I don't know, the rainforest, something like that. But then, I mean, obviously, I think at the end they would have still landed on no, we're just gonna blow it up. But I would at least like to think that seeing them try to think of something like that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, I don't know how practical it would be to create a area big enough for that creature to be comfortable, so to speak.
Well, if John Hammond could do it, surely they could find somewhere of doing it.
I guess John Hammond has a great track record for keeping his animals safely contained.
If it weren't for that one programmer guy, the park would have worked. Like, that's something really interesting to think about, that if it weren't for Nedry, the park would have worked. Well,
maybe you can make that case from the movie, that in the book it's made very clear that sooner or later there would have been something that caused the island to fail. It was only a matter of time.
I did like in the book, I don't remember them talking about how it would have failed no matter what, but I really enjoyed instead of the evil programmer taking things down, the moment where they realized that it was actually good programming, it was just short-sighted that kept them from realizing that the animals were already breeding, where they had like trackers and all the tracker did was, are there 20? Well, yep, there's 20. We're good to go. And it turned out that they had programmed it such that once it reached 20, it stopped checking. And when they changed the single line of code, all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, there's like actually 44 of this one type of dinosaur. There's actually, 200 of the little compies. We just stopped counting and we had no idea that they had actually been breeding for a long, long time. So that was a really fun reveal. And Violet's saying that it's been a while because he messed up the last recording and they have to redo it and his job has been getting in the way. Well, that's no fair. That's no fun. But I certainly understand that. Thomas is saying, oh my goodness, Matthew agreed with me. Guess I'll go hang my head in shame. I'm allowed to be right once a day, Thomas.
Well, yeah, I think that's his one time a day.
Yeah. What better way to be right than agree with you?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, that's twice I'm right. That means I'm not going to be right at all tomorrow.
So they're connected. I still count it as one.
Violet's saying for the taxonomic reasons alone, it should have been preserved. Just imagine what we could have learned of the behavior, right? And yeah, not to mention sequencing the DNA of a creature that old could bring whole avenues of science. Yeah, it really did seem weird that they weren't at all more interested. Like they did one line where Piccolo was like, "Oh, hey, look, somehow you wounded it when it tried to bite the stinger," and he pulls off this leather chunk of its skin that got stuck to it. And like, someone's going to have a field day researching that. And that was like all they talked about it. And I'm like, well, isn't anyone going to be like, wow, this is such a unique and wonderful opportunity? Which kind of like the dad's company. I still don't get what his company was. Like, I get that Sea Mine was somehow responsible for dumping waste in the sea.
Yeah, they were involved in some kind of underwater mining operation. It was raising the sea temperatures. And so that's how the crocodile got thawed out.
Yeah. And it was interesting when... Oh, go on, John.
So just about studying the crocodile. Yeah, it's frozen now, but since they know where it is, I guess in theory they could go back and take samples from it.
Maybe so. It was interesting that when they're having their discussion about the rising sea levels and what dangers that is, since then we have found, it's not really something people ever talk about, but we've actually found that as the ice caps were melting, the mantle under it was actually kind of expanding up with it. Like it was like, the mantle sits on top of the molten lava, and the weight of it was actually compressing it down. And when that weight was lifted and dispersed over a wide area, the mantle was raising back up such that we weren't seeing rising levels of ice or water as the ice was melting, which was, a fascinating scientific thing. Like, oh wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. But doesn't really fit the narrative that we need to be afraid, and people really, really like having people afraid these days.
Yes.
I say these days, people want you afraid. Governments want you afraid because of a populace that is in fear of something is a populace that's easy to control. It doesn't matter what you're afraid of, but people have always wanted you to be afraid of something. Afraid of this demographic, afraid of that type of person, afraid of the gypsies, afraid of the different person. Just be afraid, and then we can do whatever we want. Viola saying a broken mat is still right twice a day, but Joss is correcting him that that's a clock, not a Kurogen. And that's true. And I've often pointed out that if it's military time, that clock would only be right once a day. It doesn't even get to be right twice. Vile's saying we do need to worry about the greenhouse gases and global warming. We need to worry about it on a local level, certainly, insofar that it impacts people. In terms of global warming, it's worth taking a look at how they're getting that data and why they're saying about the greenhouse gases. Most of the data for that came from, I believe it is well site C or 3 of the Antarctic ice bores. So, you know, they bored down like several miles, and they said, well, we know for a fact that each millimeter equals 100 years. And when we examine the level of CO2 that was trapped within this layer of ice, we know that it was this level of CO2 in the atmosphere, or greenhouse gases, if you want to put it. And we know that at this year, that this is what the world looked like. There are so many issues wrong with that. The least of it being that you cannot say that something grows at a uniform rate. You can say that this is the rate it grows at right now, but the idea that over millions and millions and millions of years, according to older theory, that the snow in Antarctica has always fallen at 1 millimeter a year, or 1 inch a year, whatever it is patently absurd. And this is why things like the salt clock are absolutely unreliable for dating. The whole premise of the salt clock is the ocean must have started at 0% salinity, and then we know that the salt is gaining a rate of salinity at this rate, therefore subtract down to 0, and boom, you have how old the Earth is. But you can't do that because you can't prove that the oceans have been consistently gaining that much salinity each year. You can't prove that the Earth started with an ocean of 0% salinity. You can't prove that the Earth hasn't been losing salinity. Like we know that as the wind blows the ocean water back on shore, it loses some of its salinity. So there are too many factors that you cannot prove, and which made the salt clock absolutely unreliable. And so by doing the same thing with these core samples, we have created a fundamentally flawed method of predicting how greenhouse gases affect global outcomes. And Vile, I agree that the ocean never was at 0% salinity. This is one of the many issues that was involved with the salt clock. It assumed a starting rate that you frankly cannot prove. For all we know, the oceans were much higher than they are now. For all we know, they're half as much. Like there's no way to know its starting salinity, which is why it was so unreliable.
I have a little story, like an anecdote, you can consider it, about the issue of, he said 99% of people who study science say we need to worry. I studied meteorology in college. I'm not saying this makes me an expert in global warming, but I bring it up because one of my professors, while we were there, let his students be on an email list with like the leading experts in the world on tropical meteorology. I remember remarking about how much they would just argue and yell, virtually speaking at each other over the idea, was global warming affecting hurricanes or not. These are like they're like the foremost people in the field, and they were like getting into these knockdown, drag out arguments through email. But one side would say, no, it's not affecting hurricanes. The other side would say it was. They would say, we don't have enough data to tell, and so on and so forth.
And one of the other things to remember about that is during which year was it? It was during one of the climate accords. They released a list of like all these people support that global warming is having an impact. And a lot of the people on that list said, no, we did not say this. All we did was sign our name saying that we were attending this meeting. And they took that and said, well, everyone who attended the meeting said it was so. And another issue you have to remember is that the way we do funding right now is you have to have sign off from all of your peers to get federal funding for research. So what ends up happening is that people remember who doesn't support them. And as a result, if you don't support them, they're going to be petty and not support your project next. And so you actually get a lot of bogus support for things just because everyone wants their project to get funding. But like I was saying, we have no proof that the level of CO2 gases actually precedes an increase in temperature. What we have done is said there's this well site. We've gone so far deep. We see that this layer has this level of CO2, and we're assuming, which is a horrible thing to do in science, that absolutely each inch equals so many hundreds of thousand years. Therefore, we know how the Earth is, or therefore we know that this level of CO2 is going to equal this level of temperature. Add on to that the fact that the primary way that we gather our data for global temperatures is we do it from weather stations within cities, surrounded by concrete. And this is how we track it. And so there is absolutely a heat bubble effect around large cities where we do the primary level of our readings. The secondary way that we do our temperature readings is through satellite imaging of ocean temperatures, but they can only measure the top 3 millimeters of ocean water. For data that takes a look at the rest of the ocean, the stuff that we actually can measure, we actually see that there has not been any significant change in temperatures. So not only is our base assumption flawed because we can't prove our base assumption, the way that we get the temperature is also flawed because the weather stations are within our heat bubbles, surrounded by concrete and bricks and lots of things that retain heat, and the satellites aren't measuring at a deep enough rate to actually be like, oh yeah, there's significant temperature change.
Another thing I would say is that even if you grant that temperatures are increasing, we don't know, you can't prove what's causing them to increase, because we don't have enough long-term reliable climate data. I'm talking about over thousands of years, because the stuff you examine from the Antarctica, like you said, those are extrapolations based on current rates, or not necessarily true in the past. And so this could just be a natural climate cycle, because we don't have enough long-term climate data to see if does the Earth do this every certain number of centuries or something like that.
Yeah. Now that said, I actually am a huge supporter of cleaner air. I'm a huge supporter of getting rid of CO2 from the atmosphere, of getting rid of coal burning plants, of getting rid of natural gas burning plants as much as possible. I am a major proponent of this, but it's not because I go, oh wow, we're going to end the world if we don't. It's because I go, oh wow, there is a significant health impact on people when we have this kind of pollution being dumped into a local environment. We overload the natural process that God has given for the environment to clean itself up. We overload what the trees can take care of. We overload what the rivers can process of dumping, waste into them. We can't do it. And so as a result, people start to be impacted. The environment does take a hit on a local scale. And I do believe that we have a responsibility to make sure that we mitigate that for the well-being of people and, yes, even the planet. So, I mean, Daniel's talked about, how do I know this? Am I a scientist? No, I'm not a scientist. I am my job is complicated. I basically distill it down to just saying I'm a programmer, because that is the heart of what I do. But the things that I program end up being a lot of environmental stuff. Like the way I actually got into this field was programming water and wastewater treatment plants. And I started to learn a whole lot about how the Earth's natural water cleaning up process goes, and how that was adapted into these wastewater treatment plants. And, from there, it's more of a like, oh, hey, as I research this, what does this show? In fact, one of the major issues with the CO2 measuring is that if there ever was a volcano exploding anywhere nearby, on a geological scale, not on a human scale nearby, then it dumps out so much CO2 that actually ruins the readings for years. Whereas, so if there was a volcano within, several hundred miles that exploded, during one of the years, you could go, oh, wow, this year was super hot. Like CO2 was running rampant. It turns out, no, it wasn't at all. It was just, there was a volcano next door. And they actually talk about this because in Greenland, Iceland? Greenland, I think it was. In Greenland, they were doing some more of these site samples, and the site samples they were taking in Greenland didn't even come close to matching the core samples they took down in Antarctica. And they actually said, oh, well, the reason because this is because there was a volcano, so you can't trust this one, because it went 100% contrary to the established narrative of how CO2 and temperature works together. So they said, no, you can't trust it because volcanoes. So, I mean, there's just everything that we based our greenhouse gases sciences on is unprovable, laughably unprovable. Now, we can prove that those CO2 gases are bad for humans to breathe. It's quite, I promise, breathing carbon dioxide, incredibly bad for a human. And, like in China, the amount of smog that exists in their major cities is extremely bad for the health of the individuals. Like asthma is out of control right now in places like Beijing. So there's 100% a reason to clean up our planet. Don't get me wrong. I just look at this and go, hey guys, we're motivating off the wrong reasons. Like this is junk science. Get rid of this and focus on the provable medical facts, and you'll have more people on board. And Vile's saying that he too is not a scientist, but he got his degree in organic chemistry. So while the field is not his forte, he just subscribed to several science journals such as NEJM, Nature, etc. And you know what? I highly recommend that everyone does things like this. Read articles online, watch videos, get it from both sides. Make sure that you're not just becoming a echo chamber, but go out and examine the information. A while back ago, there was this YouTuber who made some comment about how you don't have to use your brain. You just have to do what the CDC says. You can just turn off your brain and do whatever they say. And it was the stupidest thing, because you absolutely need to use your brain. You absolutely need to be a critical thinker. And Vile saying, stop saying proof. Fine, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. The amount, like any legit scientist would go, wait. You're making your assumption on something we know to be unreliable. Like this is not the grounds for evidence. This is how you might start a hypothesis, but there's no evidence. There's nothing to support this, except unless you make up just all your data. And at that point, you're just doing garbage in, garbage out.
Another thing is people can look at the evidence and come to different conclusions. Like you have the data from those Antarctic core samples, and one person might interpret it one way, depending on what their biases is. Another person might interpret it another way, because scientists are people and they all have biases. Nobody can be completely impartial. Their conclusions are going to be influenced by their worldview.
Yeah. Like it honestly blows my mind that someone can sit there and say, well, yeah, we're going to say that each and every year for the past millions, hundreds of million years, Antarctica has consistently had the same amount of snow accumulation. And they say that because they go, well, we've been down here for 50 years, and 50 years, this is the average we see. So we're going to say that 50 years proves that the past billions of years is the same. I'm like, well, that is junk evidence. Like there is no way I would let anyone do anything off that evidence. And then to go beyond and say, yes, we are aware of the problems with volcanoes exploding nearby, but we're going to ignore all that because we want, they wouldn't say we want, but I would certainly say that their biases are saying, we're just going to ignore the issue of volcanoes and other things that would artificially inflate CO2 numbers simply because we're looking for it. We're looking for this data. they had a theory and they looked for ways to bolster the evidence for their theory. And that's just, it's bad science.
I also think that if there is a quote unquote consensus among the scientific community, all that proves is that most people agree on something. Does that mean it's necessarily true? Because there used to be a scientific consensus that you could treat sick people by putting leeches on them.
Yeah, you had the 5 humors, and this was incredibly scientific. Like, they followed a scientific method for coming to this. They said you got 5 different blood types, or 5 different liquids within your body. You have blood, you have mucus, you have water. I think the other one is urine, and I forget the 5th one. And whenever you get sick, you have an imbalance in these 5 blood types, or these 5 liquid types. So what we need to do is get rid of one of the liquids, which since most of the other liquids come out naturally, the only one that can't come out naturally is your blood. So we're going to let you lose some blood.
And that was their interpretation of the evidence that they had at the time. That was the correct course of action. Now we know that now that's ridiculous. But that was the scientific consensus of that time period.
And there was a guy named John Snow who was a rock star of epidemiology. If you ever get a chance to look up some information about him, he's well worth reading about. Because he actually was one of the first people who came up with the idea that rather than it being some ethereal thing that spreads disease, some miasma that spreads disease, that it was actually something microscopic. And he did this with dysentery. And he actually went out and he did the research. He said, hey, look, here's this evidence that seems like it's pointing to it being more than just a miasma that comes around this water pump, to actually being this person got sick and was exposed to it, and this person got sick and was exposed to it, and they're dumping their water here, and then right next to it, you're pulling your water from it, and now all these people are getting sick. And like, he spent years proving this, and that is good scientific research. And I think that we've really abandoned that by far and a lot. Jon Snow was sent to the Night Watch. Saw that Game of Thrones. Yeah, same name, different guy. I promise. And for once, guys, I'm actually getting his name right. I promise. I'm gonna look this up right now. Jon Snow, the father of epidemiology. Yep, Jon Snow. Fair enough. I mean, I get these wrong a lot, but no, this time, this actually got it right.
This is a momentous occasion.
It's because Jon Snow was just that cool. He really was an awesome guy. But the point is, I've heard people say the phrase quite jokingly about how the cause of global warming is federal grant money. There is an iota of truth to that, especially if you looked at how this consensus started. It really started, you followed the money, and everyone who had a financial interest in it just so happened to be the people who were saying this was true, and everyone else was saying, no, it's not. And then over time, you saw how more and more this became excessively politicized. And I'd say that this is the actual root cause. And it became such a political point, and a divisive political point, such that if you were someone who said, well, no, the evidence isn't saying that, and you point out things like what I've been saying about how you can't make an assumption that there's been a consistent snowfall in Antarctica. Like, that alone destroys the theory of global warming on the way we based it now. Like, once you say it's impossible to say there's been a consistent snowfall accumulation in Antarctica, you completely destroy all the core samplings they've done, which destroys the basis of modern global warming theory, or excuse me, climate change theory.
A lot of the same assumptions would be issues for radioisotope dating as well. It depends on certain rates being constant throughout time, whereas the dating estimates would be off if those rates changed at some point in the past.
True, and it also makes a beginning assumption, or an assumption on the beginning amount of those isotopes in the sample, something that we can't prove. And it's interesting because the same reasons that you can't trust a salt clock, which you cannot trust a salt clock, are the same reasons why you can't trust radiometric dating, because you don't know the starting amount. You can't prove a consistent rate of decay because you can actually increase and decrease the rate of decay of radiometric particles based on solar activity. Like they've actually done these studies where they noticed how across the world, the radiometric dating equipment was consistently off. And they finally realized that what was going on was there was solar activity, and as the solar activity increased, it increased the rate of decay. Even with things buried and lead lined, it was still able to affect that. So you can't say we've had a consistent solar activity over billions of years. You can't say that the rate of decay has been consistent. Plus, things like acid rain increases the rate of decay. So anything that's been exposed to a high acidic level actually has a faster rate of decay, but you also can't prove that there hasn't been particles reintroduced, because as rainwater passes through these fossilized fossils, they can actually reintroduce these particles back in. So you can't prove how much is coming out, you can't prove how much is coming in, same way as the salt clock. So what it ultimately comes down to is you say, what layer of the earth is it in? Because it's in this strata, we know that it is this age. Well, how do you know that strata is that age? Well, because I have this dinosaur bone, and I know for a fact that this dinosaur bone was in this year. Well, how do you know the fact that this dinosaur bone came from this year? Well, because it came from this strata, and it goes round and around and around. If you don't want to say, and I get this, I get this. I'm not trying to be like, well, this proves a young Earth. What I am saying, obviously I believe a young Earth. I'm not going to pretend like I don't. I believe that God created the world in 6 days. I understand that people don't believe that. I disagree. But I am saying that on a strictly scientific level, we have to be honest about accuracies in data. And if you want to say, well, yes, you can't prove the age of it, but it still doesn't prove it's not young, I'll disagree with you, but at least I respect that opinion. If you want to sit here and say, no, we absolutely can trust this stuff because it absolutely loses this rate for millions and millions of years, and we know that because we have 100 years of data, I'm going to laugh. Because that's absurd reasoning. Like, you can't even prove consistent decay with over 100 years, let alone billions of years.
And yes, there are many forms of radioisotope dating, and they often give contradictory results if you test the same artifact with different methods, because they all have various assumptions involved in the process.
And all of them, while not having affected the same way by the same interferences, all of them do have interferences that do affect them. Like, just as you can say, well, this one particle isn't affected by the solar activity, that doesn't deny that there's other things that are affecting its rate of decay and the rate at which those particles are added back to it. And Vile, I'm sorry. He's saying can't keep arguing. His phone is almost dead. I do appreciate it, Vile. Obviously, we have different opinions on this. We're not going to be changing each other's mind tonight, but I always appreciate the debate. And I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, Vile. I really appreciate the fact that you are respectful in your disagreement. A lot of people will just get lathering mad about these kind of topics, and I appreciate that you are always very respectful. And I'm very glad that you were with us tonight. So bringing us back to Darwin, not Charles Darwin, but Darwin the dolphin Darwin. This episode, was there anything in the episode that was this moment breaks it for me?
Well, I wouldn't say it breaks it necessarily, but everybody else just kind of chilling on the beach while there's a giant crocodile in the area. Not really believable. I would be getting away from that beach as quickly as possible.
I would too. Anything that broke it for me? I don't think so. I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. Yeah, like you said, John, it was campy. But it was a good campy. It was a fun campy. There are things that could have made it tighter. The crocodile not eating Ben just because it fell into its nest. I don't think that would have saved Ben. In fact, I think that would have like made the crocodile more aggressive toward him. Of course, I'm calling it a crocodile. It's not. It is a ancient prehistoric beast that simply resembles a crocodile. Maybe an ancestor to modern crocodiles, but so maybe it behaves differently than I'm expecting it to. I will say that I thought that the family dynamics were believable. I definitely thought the tension made sense. The idea of perhaps a favored son, a son who at the very least went away, and now the other son's feeling like he's been abandoned to all the scrutiny of their father. It made sense. And Vile saying that I'm gonna have to wait in line behind the Vile child and the Vile intern to make out with Spike or Spock. Fair enough. I'm more than willing to let them go first. I'm more than willing to let anyone who wants to really get in on that go first. Don't let me be in the way of true love for them, or at least true lust for them. I don't want to interfere. But I gotta agree with her. It's the ears that do it. Logical man with a good set of ears, definitely a lot better than a woman with a butch haircut and a raspy smoker voice.
To be honest, I'm not going near either one of them in that way, so I'm pretty safe. Wow, so we went off on quite the rabbit trail, but John, how about any final thoughts you got for today's episode as we go and wrap this up tonight? Well, we know that Darwin was the key again, so I just like to bring that up because it happens so often. Remind everybody he's the key. He always saves the day.
He does, and as usual, he did. He let everyone know that there was some sort of creature eating up all the sea life, and then he continued on by letting everyone know, or by actually risking life and Finn to attract the crocodile to save the day. So, I mean, Darwin was just on point.
Exactly.
Well, we will go ahead and wrap this up. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for being involved with the conversation. Thank you again, Vile, for the great debate. I'm so glad that you were here so we could have this discussion and go over it. I'd love to talk about it with you someday. It's definitely one of those subjects I know just enough about to realize that I don't know everything about it. Just enough to go, you know what, there's some serious flaws in the reasoning. And if we're going to be honest about our flaws, let's be honest about them and address them in a cool and logical manner. But with that, guys, thank you. We will be back here next Monday for the virtual pub. And we'll be back, of course, next Tuesday for the next episode of SeaQuest DSV. Everyone take care.
Good night.
Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button and share it with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will. And be sure to hit that bell icon to be notified of all the updates I do on this channel. If you want to support the work I'm doing here, then I hope you'll consider becoming one of my Patreons, where you'll get early access to all kinds of videos. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.